Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this Alumni Stories panel discussion. Very happy to welcome you. We have dedicated tonight's session to how to write a bachelor thesis. I remember when I was at that stage, it was a strange feeling. On one side, very excited because I had the impression that, well, just one more thing and then it's all over. On the other side, there was anxiety. Am I really able to do that? Do I know how to do that? Do I actually know what I have to do? There was a lot of confusion when I was at that point. Confusion about what do I need to do, how do I need to do, and so on. And we had the impression that those students who are about to start their bachelor thesis in the next weeks might have a few questions. So we thought that alumni are the best people to tell you what to do and what they learned when they finished and finally handed in their bachelor thesis. So let me introduce my guests tonight. Very happy to welcome our 5 graduates. Very briefly, we have Roman Chigas and Serena Danz, who graduated 2 years ago, and they worked together. So Roman and Serena did a thesis together. Then we have Sabina, who graduated last summer, as well as Antonia, who also graduated in 2020, and we have Rafael, who graduated in 2020 as well. If you have questions, feel free to use the chat function here in Zoom. We'll have time towards the end to answer your questions. If you're following us on YouTube, you can add your comment underneath the video, and then we will forward the questions to the Zoom meeting and try to come back to your questions. So when looking back, 1 year ago, you were in the same situation. Some of you were in the same situation. Rafael, what was your thought 1 year ago when you were about to start your bachelor thesis? How did it feel?
I think it felt good. I think about 1 year ago, we were just about to finish our final research proposal and starting the main work, so the literature review in the beginning. And I remember it felt great and we were very excited, for writing the thesis during the summer and finally doing this one last step towards receiving our degree.
Did you feel strange? Did you feel certain fear in that moment, or was it just pure excitement?
I think there was some fear in a sense that we didn't really know what to expect of the work and how big the workload actually would be, if we would have enough time and so on. So I think feelings that are quite normal at this stage, especially since it's usually your first time that you're doing such a big paper.
Antonia, same situation 1 year ago. How did it feel in spring 2020 in a very strange situation at that time anyway?
I was excited too because I had the chance to really learn something about a topic that interests me or that I'm very passionate about. But I did feel anxious, especially about, will I be able to meet the needs of my client? Will I write a work that they can use, or will they just feel like this was a waste of time and money? That was my fear.
When talking about fears, Sabina, did you have fears as well when you were in that situation?
Well, no. I was looking forward to see how in reality is. So we had a consulting project in a company, and I was really looking forward after the kickoff. I was really looking forward to start to see how it works in the company. So, and we have also a really nice supervisor. She was supporting us. So no, I didn't have any.
You were self-confident enough at that time. That's cool to hear.
Yes.
Serena and Roman, for you, it's a bit more time. It's 2 years ago, right? When looking back at your bachelor thesis, what was the greatest moment that you experienced?
The handing in part.
The handing in. How did that feel?
exhausting, but also exciting because we worked hard in the last hours. But the handing in was the greatest part about it.
Roman, for you?
Yeah, I totally agree. The last couple of days before we had to submit our paper, they were stressful. Which something we didn't plan on doing, but once we submitted it, it was just relief and a lot of joy then. Yeah.
And actually holidays. We
holidays as well,
had
yes.
Vacation the days afterwards. So we had a deadline that we were gladly hitting.
So we'll skip the holidays part in this discussion as we do not know how the situation will look like in summer, right? But there will be a few days off in any case for all of you. That's for sure. Now, Serena and Roman, the most exciting moment, I think that's logical, but what was the most challenging moment for you? When was the point when you thought, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to finish it?
Well, I don't think we've ever reached that point. It was just towards the end when we had all these thoughts inside our heads and we just had to bring them onto the paper. I think that was kind of like the moment when we start to feel the pressure of, the deadline creeping up on us. And it was just about, hey, how can we be faster? How can we put all these words onto the computer? Because after, all the exams, you kind of feel exhausted anyway. And then just to re-motivate yourself for this one last challenge, I think that was the hardest part in the end.
For you, Serena, the same moment, or was it a different one as you were working together, actually?
Yeah, our thesis was about emotional attachment, and we also grew the emotional attachment to this thesis. And I feel like in the end, it was like, how can we, I would say perfect it, but you don't have enough time to reread it 30 times, and you just have to hand in this final version that it is now without the time to give it to 1,000 people to reread it.
When was Sabina, as you said before, you were very self-confident when you started that. That became very obvious. Did you have a moment of fear, a moment of where you couldn't see the end anymore?
Well, I had the uncertainty, I think, in the beginning, because I was afraid that I would miss the scope of the project. After, when we arrange with the client the kickoff and we understand each other, okay, we want that, and after it just went smoothly. So for me, it was in the beginning a little bit like, okay, and I'm understanding right what they want, but afterwards was okay.
What about you, Raphael? Any challenging moment when he didn't see the light anymore? Yes, I was waiting for that. Tell us.
So I remember two moments. The first one was we did like semi-structured interviews with people from Austria, so economists, politicians, executives. And we kind of forgot that they probably would have a bit more things on their schedule than we do. And we started like planning the interviews definitely too late. And there was enough time in the end, but there was a moment where we thought, oh, this one's going to be close. And then the second moment was actually due to external factors. We had to postpone the deadline of our submission for 2 weeks, which was no problem. But in that moment, we realized that, well, it's going to be close, but we made it in the end, and that's the most important thing.
How did you overcome that crisis? I mean, that sounds shocking. You plan interviews, and then all of a sudden you realize those people are not available. They were not waiting for you, literally. How did you overcome that situation?
So we planned to invite about 20 people for interviews, and we just sent out more invitations. So in total, we asked about 60 people for interviews, and that's how we overcame that. But when we realized that, it was kind of a shock, and we really had to put a lot of effort into our calendar planning. It worked out in the end.
Well, obviously, you graduated, I remember. Antonia, what was your most challenging moment during the bachelor thesis?
I think when I was doing the analysis of my qualitative part, and then I realized coding is not that easy, even if you use a software. And then like, I don't know, maybe I didn't put too much thought into the analysis when I started the interviews. I thought, oh, it's gonna be fine, I'll just take something out of it. But then it was like 8 interviews, I think, and I had no idea what to do. And then I just talked to my supervisor and I said, I'm somewhat overwhelmed. I'm not sure what categories are useful, which ones shouldn't I use? And then my supervisor really helped me and guided me through this.
When talking about challenging moments and problems in general, what in your opinion are the most important problems that you can face in a bachelor thesis? Where would you say, watch out, there is a pitfall there? Roman.
Good question. I would say always try to stay close to your supervisor, stay close to your clients, just talk with them, exchange thoughts and exchange your ideas so that you don't go into the wrong direction. And in the end, you just have to rewrite everything. So I think that is an important point to keep your eyes on.
Okay. Are there typical problems you would find? Sabina?
Well, for us, for example, we plan to have workshops. And due to the pandemic, we couldn't conduct the workshops in the company. So we were really disappointed and we didn't know what to do. And instead of that, we organized the online, even more interviews and try to have another solution. So I think every time you can find another solution, you just need to be flexible and creative. And yeah, as Roman already said, stuck to your client and be close to your supervisor, and you're gonna always find a solution.
So the two of you were speaking about something very similar to each other, right? It's one of the big problems is that things do not work out in the way you planned it, which seems to be very normal in project business, right? Did you experience that too, Antonia or Raphael? You had to change your plans during the bachelor thesis?
Yes, we actually had to change our plans, also in light of the pandemic, of course. We were actually planning on traveling to Vienna during the summer to conduct our interviews in person, which of course wasn't possible. So that was definitely a big thing, yes.
What about you, Antonia? You smiled when I mentioned that, so it seemed like it rang a bell.
Yeah, I also planned a shadowing of some people in a company, and same, due to the pandemic I couldn't do it, so I had to change the plan. And then I also had to postpone the submission by 3 weeks, I believe, for personal reasons, and that also kind of changed everything.
How did you react in that moment when you noticed that plans are not going to work out in the way you planned it? What was your personal reaction to that? Frustration?
Yeah, somewhat. I mean, maybe a bit of anger, like at myself, or I should have done this instead. Nervous. Maybe also a bit like embarrassed. Like it feels like a bit of a failure, and then you have to kind of go to your client and say, oh, I can't, or to your supervisor, and you might be scared to do that because you don't want to lose face. But then I think it's really okay to do that.
How did the client react when you told them that you will not make it in the planned way? You said you felt a little bit ashamed to bring up that topic. What was the client's reaction?
Very relaxed. They said, hey, it's no problem. We're not in a hurry. You know, the deadline for us, it's not that important. It's summer anyways. Many people are on holiday. It's really cool. So, yeah, positive reaction.
Okay. Just a short reminder for those who are watching us, if you have questions to the 5 alumni, don't hesitate to write them down either on Zoom in the chat function or in the comment function on YouTube. We will take the time towards the end to answer your questions. So just write down everything that comes to your mind that you want to know from those 5 who actually did their bachelor thesis already. One of the questions that was raised before what are typical mistakes that you can make in a bachelor thesis? Things where you would say, well, okay, if I had known that before, I wouldn't have done it. That's too stupid, but I didn't know at that time. What are typical mistakes that one can make in a bachelor thesis? Or you didn't do them?
Well, one mistake I think Serena mentioned before, but I think it's crucial to the whole, to the whole feeling you have afterwards, is the very last moments to give your thesis to other people to read, because it's just, I mean, Serena, maybe speaking on your behalf as well, when you just open your thesis now and you look through it on the second page, you can already see a mistake. It just kind of takes away the joy that you should have. So really make sure you give it to as many people as you can, and have enough time for that.
Mm-hmm. Serena, is that your experience too? Did you find the mistake on page 2?
It was so bad when we rehearsed it for our final presentation. We went through it and we were like, yeah, well, that was the part that we wrote at 3 a.m. or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that showed. So scheduling, timing, everything like that, and having enough buffer time to, also we really had to put 20 or so more pages in at the end, and that was my part. I did the research part. It wasn't that big of a problem because we knew in which direction we wanted to go, and it really played out in the end. It was the part that was missing. But we also just started after the international study programs, and everyone was like already getting the kickoff done and starting with the papers, and we were like, it's enough time. Oh yeah.
So underestimating the time or overestimating the time left, however you want to put that. But time management seems to be one of the biggest concerns, I would say, based on what you said. Sabina, do you see potential mistakes where you would say, okay, well, that's too stupid. If I had known, I would have done it differently?
Well, yeah, probably I will be less time investing in literature review, because I was reading from A, B, C, everything. I wanted to try to read everything about it. But in the end of the day, you can use just Pareto rule, like 80-20. It's enough. You with support of the supervisor, you don't need to read like the whole library. I think that might be.
That's something I hear very often from students, both in bachelor's and master's level. Once you start reading, you have the impression that with every book you open, you have another 10 sources that seem to be interesting, and then you start reading another 10 sources, which will lead to another 10 times, and so on and so on. How did you manage that? As you say, 80-20% rule, that's fair enough. You don't need to read everything. Did you set a deadline saying like, until then I will read and then I stop? Or how did you manage that, not to get lost in all of this?
With support of the supervisor, because she directed us in the right direction to have the silver line. Okay, no, that's irrelevant. You just need to stick with that. And we were working about lean manufacturing, and the topic is anyway are really big. So with her help, we managed to do in the proper time literature review.
Did you make similar experiences, Antonia or Raphael, with the literature review, which seems to be one of the big hurdles, right? And then you notice, well, okay, you can do it in a much easier way.
I think we all went down the academic rabbit hole at least one time. So my tip in that regard would be just focus on a few sources, depending like on how broad your topic is. Still try to get like a holistic picture, but just limit it, because there are so many papers and good books and so on out there. So there's no way you're going to read them all for your bachelor's thesis.
What about you, Antonia? Got lost in all the books?
Yeah, I did, but I don't really have any advice on how you could do better. Maybe you could ask your supervisor, like, hey, can you tell me a few experts in this field, or kind of also focus, if you read papers, if you see the same names over and over again, the same authors, then maybe just stick to these who seem to be really important in this field of research. And then, but I didn't do that really well, so.
Okay. Now we have received a first question, which actually leads us to the next topic, which is about methodology. You need to do empirical research, or most of you will do empirical research where you collect data yourself, either by questionnaires or by interviews. When looking at interviews, and as far as I know, you all did interviews, a very practical question that was raised from the audience. What about transcription? You need to transcribe all the interviews. That sounds like a lot of work, not very interesting work, we all assume. Can you get help for that? Did you ask for help for that? Or did you transcribe, 15 interviews yourself? Antonia.
There's a free software, and I wish I knew more about this before. I think it's called O-Transcribe, and it does most of the work for you. I mean, you have to reread it again and then make sure. Sometimes it doesn't understand dialect or some things, but it really helps. O-Transcribe.
Very practical. Roman, what was your experience with the interviews?
Well, I would have wished I knew this software as well. I used another one. It was called, just slowing down the audio and just typing everything that you hear. We were actually reaching out to our client because we had very long interviews. They were like 1 or 1.5 hours. So we reached out to them, asked for help, asked if they would, give us some budget for interviews, or we would just have to limit the amount of interviews, and they were really generous. They gave us a budget, and we were able to, send our transcripts to some agencies, I think in Austria. Yeah.
Anyone else with experiences in transcription? It's a very practical question, as you all have to, or most of you will have to do it. Sabina.
Yes, we had a big struggle with it because when we were interviewing people, they were talking in Swiss German. So if you want to transcribe it in a High German or Hochdeutsch, it was I remember we needed for 10 minutes of interviews about a few hours, like 4 hours. So can you imagine what amount of work we invested in? And after 3 interviews, we talked with our supervisor, and she said, if you understand about what is going on, you don't need to transcribe it from word to word. You just need to you write down a minutes, and about what they were talking about. You need to understand. So you can also have like the middle way with your supervisor. You can find the solution.
And I think we have to be fair and say, it is possible to ask for help for that, right? I mean, transcription has nothing to do with understanding or intellectual contribution. It's just pure transcription, as the word says.
Exactly.
So, absolutely. Transcription software, I think there is plenty of software around. Theo just wrote to the chat that there is a Microsoft Word software, which is included in the new version of Microsoft Word. So I think there's plenty of software, which also leads to another very practical question that was raised in the chat. What about coding the interviews? Once you have transcribed them, the more challenging part, the less annoying but more challenging part will start, which is about coding of the interviews. Did you use any tools for that? Anything you could recommend to the people?
Well, I'm really sorry my video doesn't seem to start over again, but I would like to just ask the question. We used a free software, which was called MaxQDA. And we worked very close with our supervisor to get the categories right. So we wouldn't just had to code everything or decode everything, and then, know that we have done everything wrong. So we worked very close with her, and so we could get the coding right. And then it was just a matter of putting in the effort and actually do it. Yeah.
Anyone else use that Max QDA tool? Antonia, what was your experience with that?
I think it's a pretty good software. I think you can also get a free license, or like at least a free trial period, maybe for half a year. And there's also good manuals that help you with it. So I can recommend the software.
Did anyone try another software else than Max QDA? That seems to be the standard.
Well, we used Excel.
I was waiting for that actually, because I normally transcribe and categorize and code with Excel. So tell us a few more words, Raphael. Why not a software? Software is used for everything.
Yeah, we did semi-structured interviews. They were relatively short, and we didn't see a need to look for other software than Excel. That's all we needed. And also, I mean, it really depends on your client and your supervisor in terms of expectations of what you actually have to code. And in that regard, we didn't have, how should I put it, that high expectations. So there was no exact coding needed actually for our work. So Excel was just fine.
Okay, we move on to the next topic. I think that's an important one, as you have been talking about that several times already. You have a supervisor for the thesis, which obviously has two roles typically. On one side to coach you, to lead you through the process, and the other side also to give you a grade at the end, which is a certain conflict of interest, as we all know. But what's the role of the supervisor during the thesis? How did you see the role of the supervisor? Whoever wants to start talking. We don't need to talk about specific names or people, but how did you see the role of the supervisor in your thesis, Sabina?
Well, for us, she was our angel because sometimes we didn't know how to move forward, and we could call her. We had her contact, or we had also a WhatsApp group with her. So really, she was also supporting us. Like after we deliver something, she made a comment on that feedback, but also you did good, girls. She was really supporting us. I think that's a really important, that she is a coach, but also supporter, like emotional support, because sometimes even sometimes clients doesn't cooperate, and after she needs to, she was the person who helped us also to how to say, to talk with a client, and yeah.
How often did you have contact with your supervisor? I mean, basically it's just a few meetings, but how often was it in your case?
Oh, we had like weekly contacts. I still have a contact with her. So yeah, we had a lot of contact. I think otherwise was like just kickoff, interim, and final presentation, right? And they have a specific amount of hours they should invest, but that wasn't the case in our with our supervisor.
How did you get that? I mean, as you say, supervisors, and I'm speaking for myself as well, we get a certain amount of time that we can invest, that we should invest. But how did you make your supervisor invest more time?
I think our interest in the topic, because she was expert in supply chain, and she was she was consultant for long years in this area. And I think because we showed such an interest for that she was willing to help us. And for her, I think was like, I'm helping you because I love the topic as well. So yeah.
Serena, what was your experience with the supervisor? How did you perceive that person, and how supportive?
we were also very glad to have her and have her support. And one thing that just came up in my mind was we scheduled meetings just to be sure that we have the time slots, and then we were on short notice we would realize them or cancel them if needed. And she was also a great support when we realized that we would have to criticize our own client and how to address this issue and not to offend the client. And I was really glad to have her, and also her flexibility. I remember I was in a supermarket when I just called her and had this idea just on top of my head, and she was really supportive. And also the grading wasn't any issue with this conflict of interest. So
Okay, any other experiences with supervisors? Did anyone of you have problems with a supervisor, or a challenging moment where there was a certain conflict around the corner? Any trouble experiences? No? We'll not tell them, we'll leave away the name. We're not speaking about the person, but no challenging moment where you had the impression, no, that's not going to work, or how is that person going to grade my my thesis? No moments like that. That's great to hear, and I'm speaking for my colleagues now. Great to hear. Thanks. The question was raised: how many hours do we supervisors have according to that contract? To be honest, I do not know. And just to add to, well, there is officially a contract, obviously. We get certain hours for that, but I don't even know about that. But your supervisors will be able to tell you. But just adding to that, what you said before, Sabina, if you're able to make your supervisor interested in your topic, I'm speaking for myself, but I'm fully convinced, speaking on behalf of many colleagues, if I am interested in a topic, I don't care about the hours. Because at the end of the day, it makes so much more fun to see a result if I am interested in that. And besides that, if the thesis is good, it makes more fun to correct it and to evaluate it. If it's a difficult thesis, it's not so much fun, to be honest. So make your supervisor interested in your topic, sell your topic to your supervisor, and then they will even go for lunch with you every day if you need them, if it is possible. Again, supervisor is one person who will be important, I think, right? As you have pointed out several times. Who else will provide you with help in case you need help? And if you have that difficult moment where you don't see the end anymore, where you don't see the light anymore, where can you find help? Or where did you find help? Sabina.
Well, I can answer for myself. We had really good contact with one contact person from the client. So he was head of supply chain, and he was really supporting us. When, for example, some of the workers wasn't responding, we just contacted him, and he was the person who said, okay, now you need to do that and that and that. So I think if you have a client who wants to cooperate, it's also really helpful.
So the client actually who pays you for doing that can be a person who helps you in certain situations, as they have an interest to get a good result, obviously.
Exactly. At the end of the day, they want to have a good analysis or good result. So
where else can you find help? Even in cases of, I don't know, mental problems, maybe, because it can be challenging to do that, right? And under these circumstances this year with the crisis, it's even more challenging. Did any one of you have a very difficult situation asking for help actively? Antonia?
Yeah, I did. I just couldn't see the light at the end of the tunnel, and I couldn't write or do anything for days, like not because I was busy, but I just couldn't bring myself to start working on something. But then I think just be very open, talk to your supervisor, and also the module, what do you call it, module responsible, or the
module leader, I think, something like that. Yeah,
exactly. And just talk to them and see if something can be changed. And also with the client, like, don't be embarrassed, just tell them what you need help with, and I think everyone will be very understanding of your needs and problems.
So you made a good experience actually by speaking up and saying, I have a problem and I need help.
Yeah, definitely.
How did you feel in that moment?
Well, really good. It was also a life lesson. Like, it's not easy to ask for help, I think. And then you get like these positive reactions, and everyone is really understanding and willing to help you and support you. And it made me feel really good. And yeah.
And when looking back, was it the right decision to ask for help?
Definitely.
Definitely. Would you do it the same way again?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I think that's an important message that you're sending, Antonia. There will be people who have troubles, and trouble can be that it's just for a few days, and then okay, wait till the end is near, and then you continue again. But if the end doesn't seem to be near after a few days, then ask for help. People around will help you. Your supervisor can also go to the dean. You can talk to, I mean, we have specialized people at university who will help you as well in this situation. Don't be afraid and don't be ashamed of asking for help. I think that's a very, very important step. Yeah. Did anyone? Yeah, Raphael. Yeah.
Yes, if I may add something to this, everybody from the faculty and also your client knows that you're doing this for the first time, writing a paper of this scope. So they probably kind of expect you to ask for help at some point, and there's nothing embarrassing about it. That's totally normal when you're doing something for the first time.
Maybe not for the last time. Yes. Well, I hope you all will do more, not repeating the thesis, right? I'm not saying that, but hopefully doing something similar again in another context, be it a master thesis or a project work at your company or whatever. I was interrupting you, Sabina, as you wanted to add to that.
No, I just wanted to add, maybe sometimes help to talk with someone like a family member, or even with someone who already gone through everything like us, because I know my boyfriend, he's graduating this year, and he's asking me for tips and how to approach that. And I already done that. So for me, it's easy to give him a tip. And maybe if somebody have a struggle, maybe, yeah, you can ask alumni or just for emotional support, your family or friends.
I think it's not always about help, it's also about support, right? Not to feel alone in certain situations. And your family and your context plays a very important role. Serena.
I feel like the support and someone in the same position is a good keyword, because I didn't really feel that way because I had a fellow sufferer when we did the thesis together. So we were in the same boat, we had the same struggles, and by splitting our tasks, we still could like help each other out with a fresh pair of eyes. And this was really helpful in, I would say, in a mental, but also in a technical way on parts of the thesis.
And sometimes telling the problem to someone is already the solution, right? Instead of thinking about it and rethinking and not sleeping at night, just tell it to someone, and then you feel in a different mood in some cases. Roman, how was that? You were the co-sufferer of Serena, right?
I really was, yes. I was very lucky to write a thesis with Serena, because throughout our whole experience at university, we were always kind of put into the same groups that actually started from the very first day. And so we had built this kind of chemistry over time, and we knew how the other person is working. And so what we did at the start was to just evaluate our strengths and weaknesses. So I didn't have to do any of the literature review, which I was very, very glad to not have done. And we just evaluated strengths and weaknesses. And so we could really, try to avoid these kind of pitfalls. But then again, if you run into these moments where you just kind of doubt yourself or you question yourself, we kind of knew we had someone that we could trust and we could just openly talk to. So that really, really helped for me.
Once again, short reminder, those who have questions, who are listening, watching us, if you have questions, use the chat function. We will have a few minutes towards the end of the session to cover your questions. Use the chat function in Zoom or the comment function on YouTube, and then we'll come back to your questions. I want to ask one more question to you. What would you recommend to the students to stay motivated during the thesis? Because there, as we all know, there are better moments and there are other moments. How did you manage to stay motivated during the thesis? What helped you? Whoever wants to start with that, whoever feels motivated to answer that question.
Okay, I can add my motivation was I just saw it, and you need to make the last push, and everything's gonna be over and at the end of the summer. And if you have like a prize, for example, in September I went on holidays, so for me was that I saw, okay, I have one goal, I'm gonna finish it, even though it sometimes is hard. I'm gonna try to stay motivated and win myself a holidays or something like that.
Okay, but isn't that challenging sometimes? I mean, the holidays are far away and you're in the middle of a, I don't know, 20-page literature review. Who cares about holidays that far away?
It's true, but you need to have some light point somewhere. Or maybe for me, our holidays, for you are one ice cream. I don't know, but you need to have. I am working like that I always need to reward myself. So maybe that's kind of motivation.
Serena, what was motivating you during the thesis?
No, but it was also very motivating to see the work that you've already done, when you can see like you have 20 pages written and without the pictures in it, and that's your work, and you're almost writing a mini book or something, and you're putting it out, and it's what you've already, it's a success that you've already put out until this point. So those were my mini rewards to see what I've accomplished at this point.
Roman, what was motivating you?
Try and keep a normal life. I think, have these, it was mentioned before, these mini rewards, but just kind of put them into your daily life or, weekly life. So it doesn't really take that long to accomplish them. See friends, go out with them, go for a run, go to the gym, and still try to be active, because at the end of the day, you're going to be more productive if you're at ease with yourself, if you sleep 7 hours instead of just 3. And you will really notice that in the long run. So,
What was motivating you, Raphael? You were having those hang loose times as well, I guess, right?
Yes, of course. If I may add to Roman's comment, during your bachelor's thesis, you have the power to structure your day in whatever way you want, which is normally not the case, or not to that extent. So that was a really fun thing to me. I could do whatever I want during daytime, like small breaks in between, enjoy the nice weather that we hopefully will have this summer again. And also try to find a topic that really, well, those who have chosen it now, it's too late for you probably if it's not fun, but try to find something that interests you. If you have interviews, try to learn something from the people you're interviewing. Just make it engaging for yourself. That really helped me.
Antonia, what helped you? Mini rewards, everyday rewards?
Yeah, everyday rewards. That's clear. No, but also I think talking to friends and family really, and when I couldn't motivate myself, they would do the job for me. So.
In which way did they do that? They couldn't feel how you feel, right?
No, but they just told me like your work it's gonna be enough. It doesn't have to be perfect, which is true. And yeah, it's gonna be over soon. Just things like that.
Okay, I think we can switch over to a few questions that were asked in the chat. A question that has been waiting for a very long time. My apologies for that, but I'm not sure whether you can answer that. Has any one of you realized an own business idea, or anyone in your class maybe? Or did you all do a project, a thesis project that was commissioned by someone else, nothing to do with an own business idea? That's rather the exception, right? That you do some kind of your startup thesis here. I think there have been, well, I'm not sure whether there were thesis projects to start their own business, but we have had a number of students who did start their business. And maybe that's a perfect moment to announce one of the coming up events for the IM Alumni Association. We will have a new series where we talk about, what we called it the IM Spotlight, where we'll talk about businesses that were started by former students. And the first one will be at the end of April, where we'll talk about a business that was started by a former student about sustainable fashion. So why don't you register at our website and follow us on social media to be updated and follow the IM Spotlight at the end of April. And I'm sure they can tell you more about how to start your business, be it within or outside the context of the Bachelor thesis. Now, there were a few questions about working in a team, doing a bachelor thesis in a team of two. Now, it's a difficult situation because Serena and Roman, you were working together and maybe you had a different perspective on that. But what were your experiences in terms of efficiency, but also in terms of potential conflicts? Did you fight with each other? Or was it as smooth as like in a romance? Who wants to start?
Well, I'll go first then. I wouldn't say we had fights. I think, writing 20 pages down in one night probably doesn't really make your skin thicker. It most likely makes it a little bit thinner. So there were some tensions during, those 20 pages. But other than that, what we really just tried to do was setting ourselves deadlines and, try not to panic. I think, there might be moments when you just are hit with news and you're like, oh, what are we going to do? Can we really manage to do this? And then it really helps that you have someone, as she said, a co-sufferer who's probably going to has a different perspective on it. And lucky for us, that was always the case. So each of one just always brought the other one, just kind of calmed them down. So, yeah.
Would you agree to that, Serena? Yeah. Or did you have a completely different perspective?
No, especially what Roman said before, that we evaluated our strength. It was also kind of a special situation because I worked 80% or something around it, and my work was to write the research paper around it. So I had 1 hour commute in the morning and in the evening. So I read and wrote my things there, so I couldn't do the interviews. And that was also very helpful to have Roman besides that and doing all the interview parts and doing the coding and everything around that. But also in the end, when we were kind of struggling to motivate us, there was always, or I think always, one person hyped and one person down, so the other one can push it up. So it was really helpful to have another, the co-sufferer.
A very practical question that we could add here, as you said, you were working in addition to doing the bachelor thesis, and there might be situations where one out of the two feels like I'm doing all the work and the other one is doing nothing. How do you, or what would you recommend to have a fair workload distribution so that at the end of the day both contributed to the result?
I remember when Roman fell asleep and I had to do all the work.
But that really was on the last. That really was on the last day. I remember. And
But you were friendly enough not to wake him up, I hope.
I had to do it. No, I don't know. I maybe you have to answer that question.
Yeah, it's a good one. Yeah, probably wasn't one of my proudest moments. I apologize for that. But it just, as I said, have some sort of structure at the start. I think it's crucial at the start. You will not be able to just see all the pain points and see all the obstacles that come your way, but just have a general structure of who is doing what, and then you can take external and internal factors into perspective. And you can just say, hey, I'm actually working 60% and the other person is not working at all. So you can really balance it off, and then you will be flexible enough, and you should be flexible enough to just adjust here and there. So make that at the start. I think it helps.
And also make your own goals and schedule, because not everyone is working the same. So if you just schedule everything together, it won't work out.
And don't fall asleep on your last day. That's probably not a good thing.
Do that before. There was another question about efficiency, maybe some of the others. A very practical question, actually, as one of the students was asked to hand in or to hold the presentation already at the end of June, before the official deadline of the university. And a very practical question: do you have any tips to be as efficient and fast as possible to meet that client deadline, actually, not the university deadline? Or would you rather say go back to the client and postpone the deadline? Ask your supervisor for help in this negotiation. Sabina.
Well, we were really optimistic and we thought that we're going to have a presentation like in the beginning of July. But I think you need to communicate with the client and also explain to them, like, maybe there's going to be a postponed date because of several issues which can occur during during the bachelor thesis. So we were thinking we can do that, but in the end of the day we were presenting in August, so I don't have a good tip for that, actually.
But I think there's just a comment in the chat which I think is a very helpful idea. The student or an alumnus writing that the presentation was earlier as well, and we were allowed to focus on finishing and presenting the product without having the academic paper finished yet. So maybe it's also a question of how you distribute the work and how you schedule the work. Maybe you do the presentation and the business presentation first, and then you do the academic part afterwards, if this is possible, if the client is not asking for the entire literature review, for instance, or methodological chapter and so on. We have one last question, then we slowly come to an end. The question was about whether it is common for a client to hire graduates if they are happy with the work. Now, I'm not sure whether any of you has been hired by your thesis client, but maybe you heard stories from your class. Do clients hire students once they're done with the thesis? Or in other words, how important is the thesis for your job afterwards? Raphael.
I might add something to that. I wrote my thesis for my employer also before I wrote the thesis. And I think it's up to you. It's up to you to make a good impression, to build that relationship with your client. And if there's a possibility, yeah, I think that has happened quite a lot in the past.
Anyone of you ever heard the story from a classmate who got hired because of the thesis? Serena?
It was just like in the field that I was looking for a job, but not exactly the one. So our client kind of offered the job to me. He just said that there were open positions, but it wasn't my direction to go. But maybe well, not right now. I cannot use the thesis, but Roman can. Maybe that would be interesting how we can use it now.
Yeah, good point. I mean, our thesis was about change management. It was about, transformation, and I'm right now working at SBB in a part in process and project management, which a lot of communication is necessary right now. We're in a transformational phase that we have to do, and it kind of helps to understand, the foundation of the change management aspect that we already had to go through, and you can really see some similarities. So it definitely helps. But I wouldn't recall anyone from our class being hired by their employee or their client, actually.
Maybe I can add here one more comment, and then we go for a very, very last question. Speaking from career services perspective here, I think there is not too many students who get hired immediately after the bachelor thesis, but it will be incredibly helpful for further jobs. Maybe someone hears about that, or your client tells someone that currently there is a student doing an excellent job, or in any of the further promotion steps or so. So I think we should not underestimate the role of the thesis. Maybe not for a direct job right after the studies, but maybe for what follows afterwards. That's what I hear from alumni. Now we're coming to the end, and I just have one last question, one last sentence from each of you. If you had the chance to give one final recommendation to the students watching us tonight, what would be your final recommendation for their bachelor thesis? Sabina.
Stay flexible.
Okay, stay flexible. Be flexible and stay flexible. Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
What's your recommendation, Roman?
Well, enjoy it. I think just enjoy it, and stay on your toes. And yeah, it's going to be a great and challenging time.
What about you, Antonia? Your final recommendation to your fellow students?
Don't be afraid to ask for help.
Raphael, final statement.
Yes, if you have enough time, put your paper away for 2 days before you submit it. Don't look at it for 2 days. Don't think about it, nothing. And after 2 days, you read it again, and you will find a lot of mistakes. So that would be my final thought, and also a thing that I didn't do.
Okay.
I didn't have time. So also in terms of time management, keep that in mind.
Excellent. Serena, your final word to the students.
It will all work out at the end. I feel like all the worries and all the struggles that you go through will be forgotten as soon as you graduate and you have your paper in your hand.
I think that's a perfect word for the end of this panel's discussion. I would like to thank you all, Antonia, Serena, Sabina, Roman, and Raphael, for joining us tonight. The session will be available on YouTube if the audience wants to tell their friends and colleagues about that. It will be available after the session as well, so you can still watch it online. So thanks a lot to the panelists for your time and for sharing your experience. I think this is one of the key purposes of an alumni association. You went through that, and you're the best people to tell students what to do. Those who have not registered yet, you can find us on imalumni.ch. You will find us on Instagram. We have a LinkedIn profile which you can follow. And as I mentioned before, we will continue with 2 series of events. Actually, one is called IMStories. That's actually directed towards the students, basically, telling about the experiences of former students like we had tonight. And the other series that we're going to start in April is called Spotlight, where we will feature business ideas and startups from former students. So don't forget to sign up, register, follow us. You can also become a real member of Alumni, which is all for free and which makes you stay in contact with students, alumni, and faculty of the International Management Program. Thank you very much. That's it for tonight. Look forward to seeing you soon and wish you good luck for your bachelor thesis, and look forward to seeing you at the ceremony in September, where you will get your diploma. Thanks a lot. Enjoy the evening.